Hey everyone, welcome back to English Podcast for Listening and Speaking. Alec here, feeling curious and slightly excited today.
And hi, lovely listeners. It's Emily, honestly buzzing because we're diving into one of the most talked about countries.
Yeah, today we're exploring United States culture, all the myths, movies, stereotypes, and real people behind the headlines.
American culture is everywhere. Music, Netflix shows, TikTok trends, fast food, slang, even in our clothes and coffee cups.
Even if you've never visited, you've probably eaten American-style food and watched at least one Hollywood blockbuster this month.
Or maybe 10. Haha. Sometimes it feels like the US is partially living inside our screens every single day.
That's why this episode matters. We want to look beyond cliches and talk about what America feels like.
And, of course, help you practice real English with emotional vocabulary, natural questions, and some very useful grammar structures.
Before we jump in, quick reminder, please like this episode, subscribe, and share it with one friend right now.
Your little click really helps YouTube recommend English podcast for listening and speaking to more learners around the world.
Okay, let's start with a question, Emily. What comes to mind first when you hear United States?
Honestly, I instantly see New York skyscrapers at night, glowing brightly, and yellow taxis honking impatiently everywhere.
For me, it's a mix of wide highways, giant coffees, and busy people saying, "I'm good," even when stressed.
Haha, yes! That automatic, "I'm good, how are you?" even when life is partly on fire inside their brains.
The U.S. is famous for many things: Hollywood, Silicon Valley, fast food chains, huge shopping malls, and powerful universities.
And of course, big global brands, superhero movies, hip-hop, country music, and those dramatic crime shows everyone secretly binges.
But we also have stereotypes, some fair, some unfair. People often describe Americans as loud, friendly, confident, and patriotic.
Sometimes as individualistic, optimistic, maybe slightly obsessed with success and money, and sometimes unaware of life outside America.
I'd argue those stereotypes are partially true for some people, and mostly false for many others living there.
Yeah, any country with over 300 million people can't possibly fit into one simple, tidy description, right?
Exactly. Saying Americans are all is like saying all Europeans or all Asians. It's mostly nonsense.
Listeners, I'm curious. When you hear United States, what 3 words appear instantly in your mind? Be really honest.
Maybe you think freedom, guns, Hollywood, or opportunity, racism, chaos, or innovation, fast-paced, stressful. There's no wrong answer here.
After listening, we'd love you to write one sentence. For me, America is mostly, and then complete it thoughtfully.
Let's look at common images people outside the U.S. have, especially the idea of Americans being very friendly.
Lots of small talk. How's it going? Love your shoes? Have a great day, even with strangers.
That can feel warm, but also slightly confusing to cultures where people rarely talk to strangers unless absolutely necessary.
From my perspective, Americans are often socially friendly in public, but that doesn't always mean instant deep friendship privately.
Good point. Public friendliness is partly a social habit, like a script, not always real closeness.
Another stereotype is that Americans are patriotic, very proud of their country, and sometimes think it's the best everywhere.
We'll dig into symbols and patriotism later, but flags, anthems, and national stories are visible daily.
Then there's the stereotype of Americans being loud, talking confidently, using big gestures, and expressing opinions strongly in conversations.
I'd say some Americans are louder than average, but many are quiet, shy, thoughtful, just like people anywhere else.
Exactly. It depends on region, personality, background. Stereotypes are usually partly true, but dangerously incomplete at the same time.
Another big topic is work. People imagine Americans working long hours and having shorter vacations than Europeans.
You see that in movies, too. Characters constantly check emails, talk about deadlines, hustle, grind, and rarely actually rest.
There's this idea of a fast-paced, competitive culture where productivity is highly valued, sometimes more than relaxation or balance.
But again, that's not every American. Some communities are slower, more relaxed, especially in smaller towns or rural areas.
We'll also explore those regional differences later, including the Deep South, big coastal cities, and quieter middle parts.
I think another strong image is diversity. People imagine many races, languages, religions, and foods existing side by side.
The U.S. is often described as a melting pot, though some argue it's more like a mosaic.
Meaning, people don't completely melt into one identity, but keep pieces of their original culture while living together.
That's one fascinating part of United States culture, tension between individual identity and big shared national stories.
From your language learning perspective, American English is also everywhere. Movies, series, music lyrics, podcasts, YouTube channels, influencers.
So even if you prefer British or Australian English, your ears are mostly surrounded by American accents daily.
Maybe that's why some learners feel partially comfortable with American English and partially annoyed by its global dominance.
Listener question. Do you personally prefer American English, British English, or a mix? Why does that matter?
Tell us in the comments later. Write, I mostly prefer, and explain your emotional and practical reasons.
Let's quickly connect this to our listening skill. Hearing qualifications, those small words that limit big statements gently.
When someone says, Americans are mostly friendly, that mostly tells you there are exceptions and different experiences, of course.
If someone says, the U.S. is partly dangerous, that suggests some areas are risky, but not everywhere.
So as we talk about United States culture, listen for words like mostly, partly, largely, often, usually, not always.
Those words will help you understand that we're giving a balanced picture, not pure praise or pure criticism.
Because honestly, no country is completely perfect or completely terrible. Reality lives somewhere in the messy middle space.
In the next sections, we'll explore symbols like the flag, the anthem, and the Pledge of Allegiance.
And we'll keep asking questions, so you can compare your culture with the United States more thoughtfully.
Remember, after the episode, share your sentence. For me, America is mostly, we're really excited to read your perspective.
All right, let's move on and look at flags, songs, and that strong American patriotism you see in movies.
All right, Emily. Let's step into something very visual and emotional now. American flags, anthems, and patriotism everywhere.
Yeah, because honestly, when I picture the United States, I see flags on houses, schools, trucks, even swimming shorts.
The U.S. flag has several nicknames. People call it the Stars and Stripes, or sometimes Old Glory quite proudly.
Those names already feel emotional, right? Old Glory sounds like a beloved friend, not just colored fabric on poles.
And then there's the Star-Spangled Banner, which is the national anthem, sung at sports games and important ceremonies.
I always get goosebumps when cameras zoom across stadiums while people sing, even if I'm watching from another country.
Some people stand with hands on hearts. Others quietly listen. For many, that moment feels deeply patriotic and meaningful.
For listeners, patriotic simply means feeling strong love or pride for your country, not just a little casual liking.
Exactly. A patriot is a person who loves their country and maybe feels responsible for protecting its values.
And patriotism is the whole concept, that emotional connection to flags, anthems, stories about freedom and independence.
But like any strong feeling, patriotism can be largely positive and sometimes partially problematic, depending on how it's used.
I feel that too. Pride can inspire kindness and responsibility, but it can also become noisy, aggressive, or blind sometimes.
One unique American symbol is the Pledge of Allegiance, a short promise kids often say at school regularly.
To pledge allegiance means to promise loyalty to something, usually the flag and the Republic of the United States.
Instead of explaining alone, let's invite Jason, an American teacher, to share what this felt like growing up inside classrooms.
Jason, welcome to English Podcast for Listening and Speaking. We're really curious about your school memories and feelings.
Thanks for inviting me. As a kid, I stood every morning, faced the flag, and said, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Could you say roughly how it goes, without turning this into a full formal ceremony right now?
Sure, very simply, it's a promise of loyalty to the flag and to the Republic, one nation, indivisible.
Wow, saying that every day as a child sounds intense. How did it feel back then for you personally?
As a child, it felt mostly normal, like brushing teeth. I didn't deeply analyze patriotism or politics at all.
When did you start questioning it, or at least thinking more critically about why you were saying those words?
Probably as a teenager. I realized some classmates felt uncomfortable, especially during wars or political scandals happening.
So for some people it felt proudly patriotic, but for others, partially like pressure or forced loyalty, right?
Exactly. Some see it as a beautiful tradition. Others worry it discourages critical thinking or discussion about national problems.
That's a good example of qualified opinions. The pledge is mostly meaningful for some, partly troubling for others simultaneously.
In movies, we often see kids with hands on hearts, saying it in unison. For outsiders, that can appear intense.
Yeah, some visitors tell me it feels slightly like a ceremony they'd only expect on special days, not every morning.
Listeners, how would you feel if you had to promise loyalty to your flag every school day?
Would it feel mostly inspiring, mostly strange, or maybe a mix of both, depending on the political situation around you?
Let's talk about flags in daily life. Jason, how visible is the Stars and Stripes where you live now?
Very visible. You see it on porches, schools, government buildings, sports events, even printed on t-shirts and mugs.
In many countries, people only see their flag on government buildings, not on normal houses or casual clothing.
That high visibility is one reason outsiders feel Americans are strongly patriotic, maybe more visibly patriotic than many countries.
I'd argue the United States is largely patriotic in symbols, but individuals feel very differently inside about their country.
Completely. Some people feel proud almost all the time. Others feel disappointed but still emotionally attached and deeply conflicted.
Let's touch the big controversial question lightly. Is the United States the best country in the world?
Haha, that sentence appears everywhere on social media, often followed by very long, very emotional comment arguments.
From my perspective, the U.S. is world-leading in some areas. Technology, entertainment, some universities, some kinds of innovation.
But in other areas like healthcare access, work-life balance, and inequality, it's arguably weaker than several other countries.
So saying best country without context is mostly meaningless. Best at what? For whom? Under which conditions exactly?
Exactly. For some immigrants, it feels like the best place for opportunity. For others, it feels partly harsh, stressful.
I usually say, the U.S. is amazing in some ways and deeply flawed in others, which feels more honest and balanced.
That's a great qualified sentence. Amazing in some ways, deeply flawed in others. No country escapes that mixed reality.
Listener question. In your country, how visible is your flag compared to the U.S.? Do you see it daily or rarely?
Write in the comments, in my country, patriotism is mostly, and then continue with your description or feelings.
Jason, do you personally feel patriotic? How do you define patriotism for yourself beyond fireworks and loud songs?
For me, patriotism means loving my country enough to want it to improve, not pretending it's perfect already.
I love that. So a patriot, in your view, isn't someone who says, everything is great, stop complaining.
Exactly. A patriot acknowledges good things, and also fights to fix injustice, corruption, and inequality as much as possible.
That version of patriotism feels beautiful to me, more humble and responsible, less noisy and less aggressive overall.
In language terms, notice his sentence, not pretending everything is perfect, wanting improvement. That's a very qualified, mature perspective.
Listeners, how is patriotism usually expressed in your culture? Quietly, loudly, through sport, through protests, or mostly on holidays?
And how do you personally feel about it? Comfortable, proud, suspicious, or maybe partially proud and partially uncomfortable?
For me, strong patriotism anywhere is slightly scary when it says, we're the best, others are automatically worse.
But it's inspiring when it says, we love this place, so we must treat people and land better.
The United States makes those questions very visible because the flag and anthem appear in many public spaces regularly.
You hear the Star-Spangled Banner before sports games. You see Old Glory flying at car dealerships and schools.
That constant presence creates a feeling that being American is partly about shared symbols, not just passports and papers.
In our next section, we'll move from symbols and patriotism to the American dream and immigration stories behind it.
Stay with us, because those stories are emotional, inspiring, and sometimes very painful, like a movie with mixed endings.
So, we've talked about flags and patriotism. Now let's move to one of America's most famous ideas.
Yeah, the phrase everyone knows, even if they've never visited. The American dream. It sounds magical and powerful.
Very simple definition first. The American dream is the idea you can dramatically improve life through opportunity and hard work.
So basically, if you hustle, study, take risks, you can move from poor to comfortable, comfortable to successful.
That story has attracted millions of immigrants for more than a century, from every continent, language, and background imaginable.
But the big question is, how true is it now? Is it mostly real or mostly marketing?
I'd argue it's partly real, partly myth. It works for some people, fails completely for many others.
Same here. For some, the US feels like a ladder. For others, it feels like a locked door.
People often describe the United States as a melting pot, many cultures mixing into one big new identity.
Others say it's more like a mosaic, different cultures living side by side without fully melting into sameness.
Either way, immigration is central. The American dream and immigration are almost impossible to separate historically and emotionally.
To understand this, let's bring in Mia, who moved to the US as a student and later worked there.
Mia, welcome to English Podcast for Listening and Speaking. Thanks for sharing your American dream story with us honestly.
Thanks for inviting me. My story is a little messy, partly inspiring, partly frustrating, just like many immigrant experiences.
I already feel emotional. Before you went, what was the American dream in your imagination as a teenager?
I imagined skyscrapers, good universities, fair chances, and a future where hard work mostly guaranteed success eventually.
So you believed effort would be rewarded, more than in your home country, where opportunities maybe felt limited.
Exactly. I thought, if I go there, study hard, network, I'll definitely get a great job.
Okay, now reality. When you arrived, what was your first big shock, positive or negative, about life there?
Positive first, the diversity. Classmates from everywhere, different religions, accents, clothes. It really felt like a living melting pot.
That sounds exciting. So the multicultural part of the American dream was largely true for you, at least initially.
Yes, meeting people from everywhere was wonderful. I felt less alone, even though I was far from family.
And the negative side? I can hear there's a but hiding in your voice right now.
Haha, yes. The cost of living hit me hard. Rent, healthcare, textbooks, everything felt shockingly expensive and stressful.
So, financially, the dream was more complicated. Hard work alone didn't automatically cover those huge bills easily.
Exactly. I worked part-time, studied, but still felt mostly broke. One medical emergency could destroy my savings completely.
That's such an important point. The American dream rarely mentions hospital bills or visa problems in the glossy brochure.
Speaking of visas, how did immigration rules affect your experience emotionally and practically?
Visas controlled everything. I constantly worried, will I be allowed to stay? Will a company sponsor me?
So your life felt partially successful but also constantly uncertain, because one document could change everything overnight.
Yes. I had good grades, professional skills, but the visa system sometimes felt like a lottery, not pure merit.
This shows an important reality. Opportunity in the U.S. is not equally available. It depends on status, background, luck.
I'd argue the American dream is more realistic for citizens and permanent residents than for many international students.
True, some friends with U.S. passports moved cities easily while I carefully calculated every visa rule and deadline.
Let's bring in some comparatives here. How was life in the U.S. compared to your home country overall?
I'd say life there felt more dynamic, more diverse, but also more stressful and more uncertain financially.
So more opportunity, more pressure, less predictability, more excitement. That sounds both attractive and exhausting to me.
Exactly. I love the energy, but sometimes I miss slower days and cheaper healthcare back home deeply.
Let's play with a second conditional. If visas had been easier, how different would your American dream experience feel?
I think I would have felt more relaxed, more confident, taking career risks, less terrified of every rejection.
And if healthcare were cheaper, would you have stayed longer, or at least felt more comfortable there?
Probably. Medical costs were a huge fear. One accident could have made me completely bankrupt as a young professional.
Listeners, notice how we're not saying the American dream is dead or the American dream is perfect.
Instead, we're saying it's partly alive, partly struggling, and very unequal depending on race, class, papers, and luck.
For some, the U.S. genuinely offers more second chances than many countries. For others, barriers feel higher and heavier.
And emotionally, That's confusing. You see success stories everywhere, but you also see people working hard and staying poor.
Yes, I met people with 2 jobs, still barely paying rent. Their dream felt mostly like constant survival, not growth.
That's an important sentence. Constant survival instead of growth. Many people worldwide can relate to that feeling deeply.
Listener question. For you personally, is the American dream mostly inspiring, mostly unrealistic, or somewhere in the complicated middle?
Write in the comments. For me, the American dream is mostly, and then finish that honestly with your own perspective.
Let's also talk about identity. Did you feel pressure to become more American to fit in socially and professionally?
Sometimes. I adjusted my accent slightly, learned small talk, watched popular shows, but I kept many parts of my culture.
So it wasn't full melting. It was partial blending, partial protecting your original background and values.
Yes, I felt like part of a mosaic. I belonged partly to American society, partly to my home culture.
That's beautiful and emotionally complicated. Belonging to 2 worlds can feel richer and lonelier at the same time.
Let's give learners a useful sentence structure. You can say, the American dream is mostly X, but partly Y, in my experience.
For example, the American dream is mostly opportunity, but partly pressure, or mostly inspiring, but partly unfair.
Those qualifiers show you're thinking critically, not just repeating slogans from movies or advertisements.
Listener, would you personally move to the United States if you had the chance, or would you just visit?
Imagine this sentence. If I lived in the US, I would, and finish it with something specific, not just be happy.
Maybe I would study at a community college, or I would visit national parks, or I would start a business.
Those kinds of sentences help you practice second conditional structures while exploring real dreams and fears.
Mia, last question for you. Do you regret chasing your version of the American dream, or are you mostly grateful?
I'm mostly grateful. It wasn't perfect, but I learned a lot about myself, opportunity, inequality, and courage.
That's a powerful summary. Not perfect, mostly valuable. That's probably how many people feel about big life adventures.
Thank you, Mia, for sharing such an honest, emotionally rich story. I think many listeners will feel less alone.
So, our conclusion here. The American dream is neither pure fantasy nor universal truth. It's a mixed, evolving, uneven reality.
In the next section, we'll zoom into different regions, including the Deep South, and compare urban and rural American life.
First, let's talk about something many outsiders forget. The United States is many cultures in one.
Yeah, honestly, it's less one country and more, a giant patchwork quilt of different lifestyles and histories.
People often compare New York, California, and maybe Florida, but they forget huge areas like Midwest farming regions.
Or the mysterious phrase many learners hear in movies, the Deep South. It sounds dramatic and slightly mysterious.
Let's define it clearly. The Deep South usually means Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, sometimes Texas.
And sometimes northern Florida too, right? A region with strong traditions, specific accents, and complicated historical memories.
Exactly. When people say the Deep South, they think of warm hospitality, powerful churches, and long, hot summers.
And also serious topics like slavery history, civil rights struggles, racial tensions, and very visible patriotism in many communities.
To make this real, let's invite Sarah, who grew up in the Deep South and now teaches business English.
Sarah, welcome to English Podcast for Listening and Speaking. We're so curious about your home region's daily life.
Thanks for inviting me. The Deep South is often stereotyped, but everyday life there is more mixed and surprising.
When you hear outsiders talk about the Deep South, what stereotypes do they usually mention first, in your experience?
Usually they mention strong accents, fried food, church every Sunday, big trucks, football, and sometimes old-fashioned social attitudes.
Haha, sounds like half of American television shows. Which parts of that are mostly true and which partly wrong?
Hospitality is mostly true. People greet neighbors, bring food to sick friends, talk porch to porch more than big cities.
And the accent? Many learners instantly imagine that drawn-out Southern sound, like movie characters saying, y'all, constantly.
Some people definitely say, y'all. The accent is real, but it varies a lot between cities and countryside areas.
what about patriotism? We talked earlier about flags and the Star-Spangled Banner. Is it extra intense in your region?
I'd say yes. You see the stars and stripes everywhere, front yards, trucks, schools, churches, little local businesses.
So the Deep South is largely patriotic, maybe more visibly patriotic than many other American regions overall.
True, but opinions still differ. Some people are quietly patriotic, others are extremely loud, some are very critical.
Let's compare regions a bit. How would you describe the difference between Deep South life and, say, New York City?
New York feels faster, more anonymous, more diverse. The Deep South feels slower, more personal, more community-oriented overall.
So in New York, people might rush past each other. In small southern towns, people mostly stop and chat briefly.
Exactly. In rural areas, people often know their neighbors' families for decades. Relationships feel long-term and interconnected.
Listener question. If you visited the U.S., would you prefer that busy New York energy or slower southern porch conversations?
Comment with, I'd mostly like to visit, and then choose big cities, small towns, or maybe both for balance.
Let's also compare urban and rural America generally, not only the Deep South. The difference feels huge emotionally and visually.
Urban areas mean skyscrapers, public transport, traffic, diversity, museums, universities, and usually higher costs of living.
Rural areas mean more space, more nature, more cars, fewer buses, sometimes stronger traditions, sometimes fewer job opportunities.
From my perspective, urban America is more diverse and fast-paced. Rural America is more traditional and slower overall.
But again, that's mostly true, not totally. Some rural areas change quickly. Some cities are surprisingly quiet and friendly.
Sarah, how would you describe the feeling of driving from a big southern city into really rural countryside?
It feels like time slows down. Houses spread out, churches appear more often, and people wave from passing trucks.
That image is beautiful. It sounds warm, but maybe also slightly isolating for people who love crowds and culture.
Yes, some people love it, others feel bored. It depends on personality. Community is strong, but options are fewer.
Let's bring in some comparatives for learners. Cities are usually more crowded, more expensive, more anonymous than rural towns.
Rural areas are often safer from crime, but sometimes less convenient for hospitals, schools, and professional job opportunities.
If you lived in a small southern town, you might know everyone but travel further for specialized services.
If you lived in a big coastal city, you might have more choices but feel more stress and competition.
Exactly. Many Americans quietly dream about switching. City people imagine quiet towns. Small-town people imagine city adventures.
Listener, imagine this sentence. If I lived in rural America, I would, and finish, with a realistic activity or feeling.
Maybe, I would learn to drive more confidently, or I would finally see the stars clearly at night.
And if I lived in New York, I would maybe take the subway, watch Broadway, eat late-night pizza.
These sentences practice second conditionals while helping you imagine different American lifestyles beyond just famous tourist spots.
Sarah, does the Deep South feel misunderstood by media, especially international movies and news coverage?
Definitely. Sometimes we're shown as only racist or ignorant. Reality is more complicated, with many kind, thoughtful people too.
That's important. Every region has problems and beautiful parts. No place is completely terrible or completely perfect, right?
Exactly. The Deep South has painful history, but also rich music, food, storytelling, and strong community when crises happen.
For example, after hurricanes or tornadoes, neighbors often help each other without waiting for official organizations first.
That kind of community response feels deeply patriotic to me, in the best sense, protecting each other, not just flags.
Listener question. In your country, is there a region with strong stereotypes like the Deep South that outsiders misunderstand?
Share a sentence. People often stereotype my region as, but in reality it's mostly, and then describe more nuanced truth.
We should also mention big symbolic differences between coasts, Midwest, and South, politics, religion, social attitudes.
Some regions are more liberal, others more conservative. Some emphasize tradition, others emphasize change and experimentation enthusiastically.
But again, qualifiers matter. Saying the South is conservative is mostly true statistically, but many individuals don't fit.
Same with cities. People assume every city is progressive and diverse, but some are partially segregated or very traditional.
So, as you listen to news about America, remember it's actually many Americas with different lifestyles, accents, and beliefs.
That's why one tourist's experience in Los Angeles might feel totally different from another visitor's experience in Alabama.
Sarah, last question. If a learner could only visit one kind of place first, would you recommend city or small town?
I'd say both if possible. But if only one, start with a city, then spend few days somewhere smaller.
Nice compromise. See the famous skyline, then see where everyday community life happens more quietly behind the headlines.
In our next section, we'll switch from regions to slang, culture shocks, and daily American habits that surprise outsiders.
Stay with us because this is the fun part where we talk awesome, y'all, tipping, and huge restaurant portions.
Okay, time for the fun part. All the everyday American habits that totally confuse visitors and learners.
Haha, yes, the only in America stuff. Big sodas, endless ice, confusing tips, and strange small talk.
Let's start with language. Because American slang is one of the country's biggest cultural exports right now.
You hear words like awesome, cool, dude, y'all, road trip, all the time in movies and songs everywhere.
Awesome basically means really good or impressive, even when something isn't truly awe-inspiring, like your sandwich.
Dude often means friend or person, not only a man. You can say, dude, that's amazing.
And y'all is very useful. It's a casual way to say you all, mostly in southern regions.
Learners often love y'all because it feels friendly, warm, and solves the problem of plural you perfectly.
Then we have everyday vocabulary differences. Sidewalk instead of pavement, apartment instead of flat, elevator instead of lift.
Also, truck instead of lorry, trash can instead of bin, vacation instead of holiday for time off.
Listener question. Which American word do you secretly prefer? Vacation? Awesome? Dude? Or y'all? Be honest.
Tell us in the comments later. You can write, my favorite American word is, and explain why emotionally.
Now, let's talk about culture shocks. Things foreigners often find weird when they actually visit the United States.
The first big one, tipping culture. For many visitors, tipping feels confusing, stressful, and slightly unfair sometimes.
In many countries, service charge is included. In the U.S., tipping 15 to 20% is strongly expected.
So, if your bill is $40, you should probably tip around $6 to $8, roughly speaking.
Otherwise, the server may feel underpaid, because base wages are often very low in restaurants and bars.
I've heard many tourists whisper, why am I paying the staff? Shouldn't the company do that properly?
From my perspective, tipping culture partly reflects generosity, but mostly covers a structural problem with low service wages.
Listener, how would you feel in that situation? Comfortable tipping extra or slightly angry about the hidden cost?
Next, culture shock. Portion sizes. Restaurant meals in the U.S. can be shockingly large compared to many other countries.
Yeah, plates arrive and visitors' eyes widen. How many people is this actually for? They think quietly inside.
Many Americans automatically take leftovers home in boxes. That practice is less common in several other cultures globally.
So you might eat half at the restaurant, half at home next day? Financially efficient, nutritionally questionable sometimes.
Then there are free refills. You buy one soda and the server keeps refilling without charging again, usually.
For some foreigners, that feels like magic. Wait, I only paid once. Why is this still coming?
Others feel slightly horrified, imagining the total sugar they accidentally drink during one long dinner with friends.
Listener question. Would you mostly enjoy free refills or mostly feel overwhelmed by the endless sweet rivers?
Another classic shock. Air conditioning. Many American buildings feel extremely cold inside, even during very hot summers.
Tourists often carry jackets in August, haha, because malls and offices feel like giant refrigerators for human beings.
From Americans' perspective, strong air conditioning means comfort. From outsiders' perspective, it sometimes feels wasteful or unhealthy.
Then there's drive-through culture. Drive-through coffee, drive-through banking, drive-through pharmacies, even drive-through weddings sometimes.
It reflects a convenience-first, car-centered lifestyle. Everything is faster, easier, but also less walking and less casual interaction.
For many visitors, that's both impressive and slightly sad. Life feels efficient, but maybe less connected and slow.
Another strange habit, constant small talk. How are you? How's your day? Asked by cashiers, strangers, everyone.
Important point. When Americans say, "How are you?" they usually mean, "Hello," not, "Please share your deep feelings."
If you answer with your complete life story, they might look surprised, because they expected a short response.
Something like, "Good, thanks, and you?" That short exchange keeps things friendly without entering serious emotional territory.
From my perspective, Americans are often socially open but emotionally private, at least in early interactions with strangers.
Listeners, would you enjoy that level of casual small talk, or would you find it mostly exhausting and fake?
Let's bring Jason back briefly, as an American, to react to some of these only in America habits.
Jason, what do you think foreigners find most confusing? Tipping, small talk, portion sizes, or constant air conditioning?
Honestly, probably tipping and portion sizes. Many visitors ask, why is everything so big and the system so complicated?
How do you usually explain tipping to them without sounding defensive or embarrassed by your country's structure?
I say, servers depend on tips, so please be generous if service is good. The system isn't perfect.
That's nicely honest. Not saying it's great, just saying, "This is reality, please help people survive."
And portion sizes, do you think they're mostly positive, mostly wasteful, or somewhere uncomfortably in the middle?
I'd say partly fun, partly unhealthy. Leftovers are nice, but we probably don't need mountains of fries regularly.
Haha, mountains of fries sounds delicious and terrifying. My heart is excited, my doctor is deeply worried.
Let's connect to grammar for a moment. Notice how Jason uses opinion starters. I'd say, honestly, from my perspective.
You can copy those. For example, to be honest, I think American portion sizes are mostly unnecessary.
Or, in my experience, small talk in the US feels more friendly than fake, but not always.
These phrases help you sound more natural and less robotic when expressing opinions about culture and behavior.
We should also mention the obsession with cars and driving long distances that surprises many European visitors.
Some foreigners think driving 3 hours is a big trip. Many Americans think that's a normal Saturday activity, honestly.
Partly because public transport is weaker in many areas, and the country is geographically huge and widely spread.
Let's give you a useful conditional sentence. If you visited the US, you might be shocked by driving distances.
Another one. You should probably rent a car if you want to explore rural areas or national parks comfortably.
Listener, imagine yourself in an American diner with giant pancakes and free coffee refills. How would you honestly feel?
Overwhelmed, delighted, guilty, or deeply in love with syrup? Share your reaction sentence in the comments afterwards.
And which culture shock would be hardest for you personally? Tipping, portion size, small talk, air conditioning, or driving?
Remember, none of these things are good or bad automatically. They're just different ways of living and organizing life.
Our job as learners is to notice them, understand them, and decide how we feel without jumping to extreme judgments.
In the final section, we'll connect all this to holidays, global influence, and what people love and dislike about America.
Stay with us, because we're about to talk fireworks, Thanksgiving food, Halloween costumes, and serious questions about power.
All right, Emily, time to bring everything together with holidays, global influence, and some honest likes and dislikes.
Yeah, because even if you've never visited the United States, you've probably celebrated at least one American-style holiday.
Let's start with the big one. Independence Day, July 4th. Fireworks exploding over neighborhoods and the stars and stripes everywhere.
Families, grill burgers, wear flag t-shirts, watch the Star-Spangled Banner, and feel proudly patriotic, at least for one night.
It celebrates independence from Britain, of course, but emotionally it celebrates freedom, national identity, and summer togetherness.
Listener question. Does your country have a similar Independence Day with fireworks, flags, and huge outdoor gatherings?
If yes, comment later with, "Our National Day feels mostly," and describe the mood, not just the events.
Another huge holiday is Thanksgiving, late November, when families gather, eat turkey, and say thanks for good things.
It's less about presents, more about food and gratitude, although family arguments definitely appear in many living rooms.
Turkey, stuffing, pumpkin pie, American football on TV, and maybe a quiet nap on the sofa afterwards.
Some people love it. Others feel pressure, especially if family relationships are complicated or travel is expensive.
Then we have Halloween, which has spread around the world like a candy-covered cultural wave from the United States.
Costumes, trick-or-treating, pumpkins, spooky decorations, horror movies. Many countries now copy or adapt this tradition enthusiastically.
And right after that, Black Friday sales explode. Shops offer huge discounts, and people sometimes queue all night.
That part shows another side of American culture. Strong consumerism, buying more stuff, sometimes more than anyone really needs.
So the US has given the world not only music and movies, but also shopping habits and giant discount days.
Speaking of global gifts, let's list a few. Jazz, rock, hip-hop, Hollywood films, Silicon Valley tech, fast food chains.
Plus, social media platforms, superhero franchises, sitcoms, talk shows, and a huge amount of modern slang and fashion.
From my perspective, American culture is largely creative and energetic, but sometimes overwhelmingly loud and commercially aggressive.
I feel the same. It's partly inspiring, partly exhausting, like drinking very strong coffee every single morning.
Now we should ask the delicate question again. Is the United States the best country in the world?
Haha, here we go. Internet comment sections are already shaking. Let's answer carefully with qualifiers and examples.
I'd argue the U.S. is world-leading in some areas. Technology, entertainment, certain universities, some business opportunities.
But in other areas like healthcare access, gun violence, social inequality, and work-life balance, it struggles very seriously.
So, calling it the best without context is mostly emotional marketing, not serious analysis or fair comparison.
Exactly. For some individuals, especially in specific industries, it might be the best place. For others, definitely not.
Patriotism sometimes says, we're number one. Mature reflection says, we're strong here, weak here, we must improve.
I love that second approach. Real patriots, to me, love their country enough to admit painful problems honestly.
Listener question. Do you think the U.S. is mostly overrated, mostly underrated, or somewhere in the complicated middle?
Right. In my opinion, the U.S. is mostly, and then give one reason, not just an emotional reaction.
Let's also talk about what people don't like about the United States, respectfully and concretely, not just angrily.
Many outsiders are shocked by gun culture, school shootings, and how normal it seems to some Americans.
Others dislike the expensive healthcare system, where one accident can push someone toward debt or even bankruptcy.
Some criticize the work culture, long hours, short vacations, pressure to always be productive, and hustling.
These criticisms are not universal, but they're partly true and widely discussed inside the U.S. as well.
At the same time, many people admire American openness, innovation, diversity, and the courage to talk about difficult issues.
That tension is important. A country can be largely influential and inspiring, while also being deeply flawed and controversial.
Let's recycle vocabulary a bit. The American dream still motivates people, but its reality is very uneven and unequal.
Patriotism appears in flags like Old Glory, in the Pledge of Allegiance, in singing the Star-Spangled Banner at games.
The Deep South shows strong regional identity, hospitality, and patriotism, but also carries heavy historical and social complexities.
And all of this wraps into one huge, messy concept: United States culture, both local and global at the same time.
I want to give listeners a couple of shareable lines they can remember or send to friends.
First line. American culture is everywhere, but the real United States is more complicated than any movie can show.
Second line. The American dream isn't dead, it's just unevenly available, stronger for some people than for others.
Third line. Loving a country doesn't mean saying it's perfect. It means wanting it to become fairer and kinder.
If any of those lines resonate, screenshot this audio moment in your mind and share the idea with someone.
Let's give learners a few sentence templates to use in comments for practice and deeper reflection.
You can write, for me, American culture is mostly buh, and add words like creative, chaotic, inspiring, confusing, entertaining.
Or, one thing I love about the United States is maybe the music, movies, diversity, honesty, or national parks.
And One thing I really don't like about the United States is, and choose something specific, not just everything.
These balanced sentences help you practice debate vocabulary, qualifiers, and respectful criticism in English conversations.
Remember our listening skill today. Pay attention when people say mostly, partly, largely, in many ways, not always.
Those little words protect you from believing simple slogans like, America is perfect, or America is terrible.
They teach you to say, this is good in some respects, bad in others, which is a grown-up perspective.
Before we close, let's quickly review key vocabulary you met. The Stars and Stripes, Old Glory, the Star-Spangled Banner.
To pledge allegiance, the Pledge of Allegiance, patriot, patriotism, patriotic, the American dream, and the Deep South.
Plus cultural ideas like melting pot, diversity, stereotypes, small talk, culture shock, and of course, tipping and huge portions.
Hopefully now, when you watch American movies or news, you'll hear these words and feel more confident understanding them.
Listener, remember, no country is simple. The United States is mostly powerful, mostly influential, and mostly complicated.
And that complexity is exactly what makes it so interesting to talk about in English and reflect on personally.
If this episode helped you, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with at least one friend.
And leave a comment using at least one new word, maybe American dream, patriotism, or Deep South, in your sentence.
This is Alec, grateful you spent time with us exploring United States culture in such a thoughtful way.
And this is Emily, sending you curiosity, courage, and a big virtual road trip across your favorite version of America.